Welcome to the second episode of Marketing by the Minute Season 3 After Class, and I am your host, Skyla Bentley. This series explores the different stages of WWU marketing alumni, with mid-career alum being the focus of today's episode. This podcast is being created, run, and edited by integrated marketing communication students, with the goal of giving alumni an outlet to connect with current students and give them insight into their personal marketing journey and the steps they have taken since graduation. Okay, so today we're going to be chatting with Chad Lindstrom, who graduated from Western in 2010, actually, and we'll be talking about his experience in the marketing department, the process of job interviews, working different jobs throughout his marketing career, successes he's achieved, as well as the challenges he's faced throughout this journey thus far. Chad, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us this morning. How are you doing?
I'm great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the invite, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. So last episode, as I mentioned, we talked to early career alumni, and we asked them what their elevator pitches were, since they're currently searching for, their first positions right out of college. But since you've held multiple marketing positions already, we'd love to know in a nutshell, what do you bring to the table, and how do you differentiate yourself in such a competitive industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, throughout my career, the thing that has been most exciting, and also the thing that I've tried to set myself up as being different, is really leaning into the digital landscape, which I know a lot of people are these days, but more so within the branding and positioning world of marketing. So I love getting to take a brand and reposition it in its market, to reach the customers better, or developing new brands, right? So everything from helping, Joe Schmo down the street with his lawn business to helping Nike redefine how they might talk to their basketball consumer and what that brand looks like. So for me, it's been a really exciting, that branding side of things. And I think the big thing for me that sets me apart from others is using the creative side of the brain with the analytical side, which is why I got into marketing in the first place. But I love the combination of those two things are really important to help figure out how to differentiate your brand or your product in the marketplace. So yeah,
that's awesome. I know that's why I went into marketing, actually, is I really like that you can really use the analytical side, and you can also be creative in whatever you're doing. And I feel like a lot of degrees, especially within the, in business, it doesn't really give you that outlet. So that's awesome to see that you're actually using that in the real world.
Absolutely.
And then, we'd love to take this time just to get to know you a little bit more about your background and your time at Western. So, what has life been like for you, and how has your career evolved since graduating?
Yeah, absolutely. So while at Western, doing the business program, like you just said, I learned that I really enjoyed the marketing side of things. I loved getting into the customer's mindset, and I loved that marketing could really be an influencer or something that could actually help people if it's done the right way. Right? We all know those annoying ads, but there's also there's the ads that are good that actually can help and give you the right thing in the right time. So I became fascinated with that side of marketing, and I loved the creative ideas. So I knew right away I wanted to try out the agency world. I wanted to be part of an agency. I wanted to work on multiple clients. I wanted to think of those creative ideas. I wanted to be a problem solver for a company. And so I started in that path. I was an intern with a company that was a marketing agency, and then I got hired on with them after I graduated. And then I went, and they were a smaller local company. And then I went from there to a global ad agency called Razorfish in Seattle, where I did get to work on Nike for about 5 years there. And again, had a great opportunity to work on such an iconic brand, which was really a lot of fun. After my time in the agency world, then I got curious about, what would it be like to be on the client side of things and not at the agency side? So I jumped over and joined Milgard Windows and Doors as their marketing communications manager for their corporate marketing team. And got to then be the one that was the interface on the client side with the agency partners and the creative partners we were working with, and helping decide what that looked like for the company. And while I was there, I also started doing some consulting as well, on just my own time on projects that I was excited about. And one of those projects led to me getting an offer to be the VP of marketing for a local company and help them really grow a brand and grow their marketing presence. They'd never had marketing at all. That company was called Smart Cells. And so I was able to join that company, and for 6 years helped them build up a marketing department, a marketing strategy that integrated with their sales team, and what that would look like, and actually put that into practice. Helped them start new brands while I was there. Really awesome opportunity. And then that led to an opportunity with Amazon. So staying in the digital branding, advertising space, I joined Amazon as part of their private brands group. And so everyone, any product that's on Amazon that was like their own branded item, paper towels to batteries, I was responsible for the online advertising campaigns that would be pushing those products out to consumers offline to get them back to Amazon.com to shop. So, again, big picture strategy, trying to determine how we can reach the consumer in the best way possible, given the product and the we were trying to push. And so, and that's led me to where I'm at today. So yeah, I've been really lucky to have a good mix. About half of my career in the agency side, half of my career on the client side, and always in a digital advertising sort of space, but a lot of focus on branding and positioning as well within all of that, throughout my 12 years now. So it's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious to know, like, do you have any advice for people graduating and like whether or not it's beneficial to either start in-house or go directly to agency, or what kind of advice would you give someone who's, contemplating those two options?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's two very different worlds, and I think the reason that I ultimately liked the agency side is I wanted to get. I think the agency offers you an experience to get your hands involved in a lot of different elements of marketing. What I've seen sometimes on client side, and there's no right or wrong answer here, right? I think some people are more prone to, like, they know the area of marketing they want to go into right now or the type of thing they're really interested in. And when you go client side, I feel like you get really, like, not siloed, but you get kind of assigned almost into a very specific area of marketing, and which isn't good or bad, but you can get, if it's your first position and you get pigeonholed as a product marketer, and then you're in that product marketing lane. After that fact, if you want to move to something else, it's like you have to kind of do a diversion or a different path to get to a different area of marketing, or in your next interview you have to show how the product marketing you have could translate over into this other, digital advertising space or whatever it might be that you want to try out instead. And so the reason I loved the agency side was you got a taste for all different types of marketing right out of the gate. So I mentioned that I started with a kind of a smaller boutique agency, and it was one day I'd be coordinating a photo shoot for one of our clients and getting to see what it's like to create the actual assets for our customer. And the next day we were working on writing copy for a brochure. The next day I was working on overseeing a web development project for someone else. The next day it was building a new logo for like a lawn care service, like I mentioned. So I got to see all these different avenues of what does it mean to have marketing within the company? And there's so many layers to it. And so getting to see all of those and kind of have a taste for all those, then I could kind of hone in on, okay, what are the pieces I really enjoy? And I want to set my career up to be able to do more of that, maybe less of the areas that weren't as exciting for me, right? So I think that to me was why I ultimately went that agency route. But I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think if right now you want to bring a product to market, and you want to be part of that product life cycle and making it the best for the customer, and you want to own product marketing, then it's there's great opportunities to start client side right away for sure. I just liked that variety that the agency
Yeah, and
offered.
I think that's awesome, especially just speaking to current marketing students, or maybe just like starting in their degree, or people who even just don't even know what they want to major in right now. And if they were to find this podcast, I think it's awesome to really show them that marketing is such a versatile career choice, where you can have any artistic background, like you were saying, you really get to pick and choose and see what you're interested in. I think that's one of the really powerful things about marketing, and you get to choose what you want to do, you get to choose what you enjoy. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think keeping that open mind too, you might not realize, when I started into it, I liked the idea of running these campaigns, that kind of stuff for customers, and being part of that traditional advertising experience. But what I learned through all of that was that I personally, I have a creative side as well. And I learned that in marketing, I could really develop skills in Photoshop and InDesign and Illustrator and all these other things that I didn't learn in school, but I could learn post graduation, that led me to doing things, just passion projects on the side. I've been able to develop 3 separate websites, just outside of my regular job, just with other projects that I was just passionate about, or things that I loved, or developing logos for, a friend's company, or, some other things like this, where you get to start, you just start to realize the things that my brain works well in this capacity, and I can use that in marketing. This is pretty fun. So yeah, keeping an open mind, and making sure that uh, you realize there's so many layers to what marketing means, and so it's all really fun, which is the
Yeah,
good
that's
part.
awesome. And jumping back just a little bit, you were talking about working for like smaller companies and really helping them grow and like, find themselves like in their industry. How fulfilling is that to know that like you are such like a helping hand in like providing these companies that outlet to really market themselves and like get themselves on the map? Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I really really enjoy that side of it. And you're right. The word fulfilling is definitely how I would describe that, because so the first agency I was at, it was all small medium businesses that we were helping and working on, and it was like companies that maybe couldn't afford a marketing department or couldn't afford to have a full-time people doing this, that, or whatever. So they would bring our team in, and we would help them to get a strategy put together, or something simple like, hey, we just need some new brochures, or we need a new website, whatever it might be. But it was really really fun to come in there, learn about the business, offer them real solutions that they hadn't thought of or didn't realize, would help. And then when they put them into play, to see that growth, help them, or those strategies help them grow. Really, really exciting. And that's ultimately why when I went to the client side of things, I started kind of doing some, the consulting thing as well, because there was other projects that I realized I could, help in this capacity. And that's ultimately why I stayed at that company for 6 years. The Smart Sales company it was really rewarding to create something from scratch and then see it work and see it out in the marketplace and see people, using the product and talking about the product and loving the product and realizing, wow, look what we did. This is pretty exciting. I mean, it's making a difference in these people's lives. And so that, to me, yeah, I love that side of it for
Yeah, I
sure.
love how hands-on marketing is. I feel like the class that we're in right now, Integrated Marketing Communications with Dan Purdy, this is really the first time that students have been able to really produce something. Like there are teams, producing TikToks or like, developing websites and stuff, and we're developing this podcast, and it's crazy to see like your work actually pays off. Like people are actually watching this and they're actually receiving a benefit from whatever you're doing. So it's awesome to see that you get to do that on a daily basis in what you're doing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and that class, I remember taking that class with
Oh my
Dan
gosh,
Purdy as
wow.
well, and we uh, we had to do a very thick spiral bound, marketing communications plan that was super robust, and it's cool to see how much it's evolved and you guys doing things like this now. That's really really awesome. But I remember that class really well, and it was building that like portfolio, if you will, of like we had to think about either create a product or take a product that's already in the market and build a whole marketing communications plan around it. And I remember we created a product, and going through that process of like thinking, what's the commercial, what's the tagline, what's the brand, standard, and all that kind of stuff. Building every piece of that. What's the press release how's it gonna read, and where are you gonna put the press release, and what ads are you gonna put out there, and thinking through that whole plan. That really is what off in my brain, that passion of this would be fun to do at an agency for a bunch of clients, and that was really the kicker. So it's cool to see that you guys are you can use today's mediums to still make that happen, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
and it's awesome to hear that this class still had an impact on what you're doing today. And
Huge
and you get to
impact.
use those skills and stuff that Dan taught you, and it's still relevant even in such like an ever-changing, industry like marketing with technological advancements and such. Like those foundational elements of marketing that are being taught through these courses are so beneficial. So that's awesome to know that yeah, you're still
Absolutely.
using those. I actually saw on your LinkedIn that you didn't just get a degree in marketing at Western. You also it was science and I think Mandarin Chinese, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that was my
Okay.
minor, was Mandarin
Yeah.
Chinese. Yeah, so I've always been fascinated by languages, and that one was super fascinating with the way that I don't know, it has a rhythm and has almost like a musicality to it. And so I even took some time during when I was at Western. I took a couple of years and I went and taught ESL. I moved to Toronto with the Chinese family, and I was just very intrigued by the culture and the language, and taught English as a second language for a while there, with folks who were from China and trying to make their way in Toronto. And so when I came back, I was like, I just love this language. I want to keep using it in some way, shape, or form. And so yeah, it's kind of
Yeah, that
fun.
is really fun. Can you share with us why you decided to really pursue a career like directly more in marketing, and maybe how like your other areas of expertise like Mandarin have maybe like influenced how you approach marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what it did, again, I think it helped fuel the creative side of my brain. Like there's that side of my brain that loves music, likes art, loves I think again that's why the language was so fascinating to me was it kind of filled that part of my brain in a way that it made me realize I need to use the creative side of my brain. I learn that way. I'm a very hands-on learner, that kinetic learning, that's definitely me. I like to get in the mix with things, and I think that that's translated really well for marketing because even at a large company, but at small companies especially, even if you are the VP of marketing and you're deciding business level decisions up at this top level, you're also maybe later in that day in the weeds building a Facebook ad, to push out whatever's going on, or writing the email that says, hey customers, this is this deal we have going on next week. And so there's never a moment when you're not involved in all the different layers and levels. And I think that's why I that ability to get to use this creative in my brain and continue to just be involved is definitely translated over in our marketing career. And I think too, just the nature of, I didn't have to learn Chinese, but it was more a side thing that was interesting and I wanted to keep learning. And I think that's just a good way of thinking. You mentioned it a few moments ago, marketing especially, it's always evolving. It's always changing. There's always new ways to reach customers. There's so many new things changing every day in this profession. So you really are always learning. There's never a point where you're like, I know marketing. I don't have to learn anymore. I'm just going to kind of ride this out. If you do that, you're going to fall way behind. And I think that part of this profession is you get the opportunity to continue to learn, evolve, grow, and try new mediums out, right? Like try things like podcasts, like saying doing TikToks or doing whatever it is. Brands are figuring those things out and how to use those things to help their brand grow. And I think it's fun to be part of that cutting edge of what technology is allowing for us to do to reach the consumer, and figuring out how that works best with your brand, whether you're Amazon or you're the little, mat and flooring shop down the street. Um, you can figure out the right way to use those pieces of technology for your business and your brand, and it is really exciting. So it's always learning, always changing, and I think that's been the biggest thing that I've taken is, or why those things were part of my degree as well.
Yeah, and kind of stemming off of that, so since you've been navigating the marketing world for over a decade now, what kinds of challenges have you faced? One of them, as you mentioned, is kind of that uncertainty of marketing and that it's always changing. Like, how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I think that can be the scary part sometimes, right? When you think about marketing, especially as you get more elevated in a role in a company, um, you know, sometimes they're coming to you and the CEO or whoever it is, they don't have the right answer. It's not like when you're first starting out and someone has the answer and they're like letting you kind of work your way toward it. They're coming to you and saying, we have a revenue gap. We have to make this up somehow. What's marketing going to do to help us get there? And like they don't have an answer for it, and they're looking to you to provide that answer. And I think it's an exciting challenge, but it's definitely one of the challenges that you have to be ready to face in the marketing world. Is you know what's that plan? How are we going to go to market with this? How are we actually going to read it? What's the budget going to be? How much do we need to spend to make sure that we're you know bringing in more than that, so it's worth our spend to run this campaign and proving that to the CEO and or whoever else you need to prove that to. And then it's the scary part of, okay, you have it written down on paper. Now we got to make it happen. You actually got to go do that thing. And so again, it comes back to the feeling too, but it's that nervous excitement, if you will. That's when the adrenaline starts flowing, and you get to put that thing out in the world, and you hope for the best. You plan accordingly, and when it works, and when it does what you anticipate it's going to do, it is really exciting. But that's definitely an area that's tough in this. I think you have to have the right mindset when you're going into marketing roles. Of you have to be a problem solver, right? Like, is what marketing is doing is you're solving a problem not only for the company but for the customer too, right? You're showing them, um, you're providing them a solution for something maybe they didn't know they had a problem for, or they didn't know they needed the solution for, but you're showing them why they need this. And so I think problem solving is a big part of it. Outside of that, I think in marketing in general, there's another challenge that tends to come up is, um, there's two more things. One is your own growth, right? As a marketer, you want to continue to grow and develop. And I think you see people in marketing oftentimes like jumping around to different companies, maybe because from what I've seen, marketers like to continue to learn and grow. And so making sure you land somewhere that has an opportunity for growth within that company, I think is really important for you as you're considering those things. So that's been a challenge, in my career of I feel like I'm at a point where shoot, what's next, right? And so um, finding those roles that allow you to continue to grow and develop is really important. And I think the third thing is just the changing marketplace, the changing, the overall economy. That can be it can be tough, right? If you're especially if you're kind of in the B2C world where you're trying to sell something to customers in order for your business to work. Uh, the last few years and the COVID years, like it can be really tough to be in marketing, right? Teams go from 10 people down to two, and you still have to produce and you still have to make the business work. And I think that can be that's also a big challenge in this industry is that we're one of those professions where uh, when things are going well, then marketing, helps do that. But when things aren't going well, it's because marketing's not working, or there's always marketing is always involved in the conversation, and so that can be tough at times. And I think but it's also again, it really boils down to solving a problem, showing that you do need it, and this is why. And it also is what makes it exciting and fun every day too. No 2 days are the same,
Yeah,
really.
and that's awesome. I'm really excited to graduate and get into that, just because I feel like it's working like a minimum wage job throughout college and stuff. It's the same thing every day, and I'm excited to find
Totally.
something new. So we're gonna move into our next segment titled Juicy Questions. So we actually put out a survey
All right.
for current and even potential marketing students where they can submit questions that they want you to answer, and we separate them into three buckets. So we're gonna start with the not so juicy questions and end with the really juicy questions.
All
Because we're
right.
going to be online today virtually, I'm going to pick them for you, so you have to trust my judgment and my picking skills.
I trust it. I trust
Perfect.
it. That's perfect.
Okay, so the first question is, what is your best career advice?
Ooh, I would say best career advice is keep an open mind and never stop learning. Those two things. And I think the open mind is you may have. I know I was one where I really wanted to work for like Nike. Or, I had these big brands. It's like I want to work on that big brand. That's my goal. Um, and it was sometimes the companies that I had never heard of, where when you think about it on paper, you're like, doesn't sound that exciting or something like that, right? But just trying to keep an open mind, not having preconceived notions, can end up being some of the best, moments of your career when you get to, yeah, build that brand up or do something with that brand that you never thought was possible. So I'd say open mind and then continue to learn are the two biggest things I could offer.
Perfect. That's awesome. Okay, do one more from this bucket. Okay. Do you ever look back at what you learned at Western, and do you use it?
Yes, actually, I do for sure. We already talked about the marketing communications class. I think those foundational skills of what goes into like a marketing communications plan and how you communicate out to the customer is, I still use a lot of those things. The other class that really sticks out to me was Dr. Love's class on the consumer behavior mindset. I forget what it was called, maybe just consumer behavior. Um, but for me, that course was um, really instrumental in me wanting to solve that problem for the customer. And I think that it's been really helpful in every role I've gone into, um, taking a moment to really think about not what do we as a company think about our product, but how does the consumer view our product or view our brand? What's the vibe out there in the community about our product, and thinking from the consumer level, really trying to get into their brain and how their brain works and thinks, has been a huge part of whether it's a small campaign or thinking of a brand, slogan, of a logo, a website design, how you're building that or tailoring that because of how the consumer views you or uses your product. That course was really instrumental for me. I think the last one that I just loved was when I was at Western. There was an adjunct professor named Ann Stone. She is now, I think, at UBC up in British Columbia. But she had been, at Coca-Cola and all these, done all these big stuff with always on the branding side, and her class was branding. And there was one thing that she said during the course of that quarter, which was, with a brand, always remember that everything communicates, was her word. I think she wrote on the board the first day, everything communicates. And that means everything down to, the pens you use, to the way your employees talk about, when they're not online, to what your customers say, everything your company does out there, it communicates what your brand stands for. And I think that has been really instrumental. I've taken that mantra with me to each company that I go to, because I think it's really important to realize, or to, in building a brand, you have to make sure you're communicating on every front. And I think that's helps you hit all those details. So those three really stand out in my mind as courses I still use things from every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, yeah, Dan really, drills it in our brain that marketing is like communicating, delivering, and capturing value. But you have to know the consumer to know what is, of value to them. So nothing matters if they don't see the value in it. So that's awesome that you touched on that. Okay, so now we're going to move to bucket number 2. Okay.
The kind of juicy.
Yes, kind of juicy. What do you love most about your career?
I really love that every day is different. I really love, we talked about it at the beginning, but I love getting to see your work, marketing something where you get to see the results pretty immediately, right? Like, sometimes there's a product that'll last longer term and you don't see the results for like till later in the year. Like, that happens too. But there's also short-term products that you launch and a month later you see the results, or even 2 weeks later you see the results of what you put into action working. And that's really exciting. And so I love the fulfillment side of it in that regard. And I love helping customers, like I said up front too, helping customers find that product or that service that they didn't know they needed, and truly being a solution for the everyday customer, I think is really something I love about what we get to do in the marketing field.
Yeah, I know. I feel like sometimes when people decide to go into business, they don't realize how interactive it is, and like how you really have to have those like personable skills, and you need to be able to communicate with people, and you have to, build relationships, because that's such an important part of business and marketing especially.
Yeah, it's huge. Relationship building is huge for sure.
Okay. Okay, second question. What would you say was the biggest struggle you experienced while your time at Western?
That's a good one. I gotta make me think back here. Thinking back, I feel like it was, in the moment, it can feel maybe overwhelming. I remember feeling like that kind of sense of, is this the right thing? Like, I remember, you have that notion of, I'm choosing this major, like, really what I want to do forever or for my career, And I remember feeling like it was just hard to know if it was the right choice, right? And having that kind of,
I feel like they call it like imposter syndrome. We've had a couple submissions being like, how do you get over that imposter syndrome of like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I going to be able to do this? Yeah.
Yeah, I think at the end, and I think that was a real struggle, especially for me. I couldn't choose when I originally went to Western. I actually was a music major, and so I was going to do music. And then through the course of things, I discovered, that music was a great hobby, but I wanted to do something else with my career. And so, so I really had this like, what is the path? What's the thing I should be doing? And that was probably the scariest and hardest thing. But I will say there's certain courses, through talking to your professors, that was huge for me. Like, Ed Love was one that was really always willing to talk about, future and what's next and what to think about and how to look at things. And I think that leveraging their expertise and their knowledge, going into an office hours and talking to them about how you're feeling, something that helped me. And I think that's, and ultimately you have to kind of follow your gut, right? Of, this feels right. And the good thing is too, like once you graduate, if in a couple of years you're like, I don't know if I like product marketing, or I don't know if I like, well then pivot, you're not going to be stuck. Like you can always change and grow into something completely different from what you studied. And I think that's having that reassurance now, like thinking back that there's people now who are in marketing who don't have a degree in marketing that I've crossed paths with, and they're brilliant marketers. Their degree was in, English or something like that. Like you never know where you're going to end up. And I think just following that gut and doing what you love is huge.
Good. That's awesome. Okay. We'll do one more question from this bucket.
Perfect.
Okay. In what ways did you go about finding a company to interview for?
Like
just like after graduation. Yeah.
Graduation. Okay. So I spent a lot of time ahead of graduation. I wanted to get a great internship. And so I spent a lot of time trying to find companies in the area that offered internships, and I wanted something that was agency like. So I wanted to kind of get that feeling of all the different possible avenues marketing could take me in, and hopefully get like a experience what that might look like. So I was fortunate enough that I found a great company that checked those boxes for me to do an internship at, and their name was Outsource Marketing. They've rebranded to be called Outmark now, but they're in the Bellevue. Actually, they're in Issaquah now. Anyway, that's that smaller boutique agency that I started with. And after my internship, they said, "Hey, when you graduate, we have a spot for you." And I was like, "This is great." So I was really lucky in that way, where my internship really did help lead to a role post graduation. But I'd say the process of deciding where to interview or how to interview for companies is, you should have a checklist in your mind of the things you want to, either work on or be a part of, or the types of work you want to do. Maybe in the certain industries you want to be part of, especially in today's world, there's a ton in the B2C space. There's a lot of B2B work that needs to be done. There's a lot of the soft stuff where there's all this, software that's out there that needs, marketers to help promote it and get it out there. So kind of thinking about it in terms of what industry you might want to be in or a part of. Like I say, for me, it was, I wanted to experience I wanted to use like all the marketing classes I had at Western at the agency. And I just felt like an agency would allow me to kind of make that happen, where I could kind of touch on all these different areas to then figure out in the professional sense, all right, what of these things do I like? What do I not like? And it's an always evolving process. I think each time you step in your career, there's things you like, things you don't like, and you kind of continue to refine or to continue to narrow that down. But yeah, make sure you have a list, but also, like I said at the onset, keep an open mind about what the company is, because it may be something really great and lead to something really great in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like what you said about just knowing what you want out of a company, because that can really guide what you're doing. It's not like, obviously you can apply to whatever, but have that mindset of like, well, I can do this, and if I want this, then I can achieve it. So, okay, we're moving into bucket number 3.
Ooh, the extra juicy.
Okay, how do you find meaning and purpose in the work that you do?
Oh, that's an awesome one. I think it really does come back to looking at that consumer mindset, or the consumer that you're reaching. And for me, being consumer or customer first has typically led to the best marketing ideas or campaigns or strategies that I've been able to be a part of. And for me, it's seeing that play out, right? Seeing that it's actually helping people. I think a good example is that company that I was VP marketing for. They had anti-fatigue mats and flooring is what they specialized in. They had this really unique patented structure. And while I was there, we launched it into a line of insoles as well. And the whole point of it was making people feel better, right? At the end of the day, we were trying to make people feel better when they were at work, or when they were working out, or whatever they were doing, wanted them to feel better. And so researching the customer and realizing what we were doing for them and helping them realize or see our solution, but then going back to the customers after and hearing those stories, that really motivates you and fuels you when they're like, I've had back pain for 15 years and I couldn't even hardly go to work anymore, and it was really affecting my performance. And now with this, mat, like, as silly as it sounds, it's changed my life. And and when you see the value or see that your work has helped in that, that's super fulfilling, and it really motivates me to keep going in this profession and keep helping the customer. I think customer first is huge.
Good. Okay, we'll do one more from this one. Okay, did you ever contemplate leaving the marketing program, and if so, why did you stay?
Ooh, so leaving marketing in terms of while at Western or post Western?
You can talk about both, if you...
Okay. I think while at Western, it took me a while to identify that marketing was where I wanted to be. Once I got into it, it was that notion of this feels right. Like that kind of, like I said, that gut feeling of this feels good. This feels like, right in my wheelhouse. I can be creative, be analytical, all at the same time. And so it was getting to that point. But once I was in it, I was then, very excited about it. Um, Going into the career side, I think there's been moments where sometimes marketing can be tough, and you can be faced with things where you do all the research, you do all the right, what the textbook says you should do in terms of a plan, and it might not work. And it might, it can be really challenging. So there's been points where I've considered maybe, do I want to do more of the sales side of the marketing thing? Do I want to do more just only creative and design? But I think at the end of the day, it's, for me, it comes back to that customer and serving the customer at the underlying level of it all, and that really is where I get the most of my fulfillment out of it. So I've always stayed in it because I can't leave. It's there's too much fun involved in
Yeah,
marketing.
yeah. I
For
was
sure.
going to say there's so much to offer, and you were talking about how you
There
wanted
is.
to pursue a degree in music at first, but like there are a lot of people who are producing music, like in their college career, and you can use those marketing skills to be able to market your own music and even pursue a career in that. So again, there's so many
Totally.
options that you can pursue through marketing.
Yes.
Okay, so last episode we asked our guests, they had just graduated just this last fall quarter, so only 3 months ago, if they had any questions for our mid-career alumni guest. And they wanted to know what it's like to
Awesome.
negotiate as an employee or potential employee, and how do you ask for what you want and really articulate your value?
Oh, awesome. That's a great one. Yeah, I think for me, as I've gone through the process a few times, I think that it's the hard part for me up front was realizing your own value and what you do bring to the table, um, for a company. And I think that sometimes that can be hard, right? You're excited about the next thing, you want to just get that next thing, and they offer you something, and you think, great, this is it. But taking as to moment, I think that the negotiation part is definitely important. And I would say, use your past experiences to realize or help show, um, how you do bring value. And I think that what I've noticed is real data, from past, opportunities that you've led or been a part of, having some real data to back up, just your own theory, so to speak. Of like, I think I'm great. Well, that's good, but like having some points of I ran this campaign, it led to this percent growth, in this amount of time. I built this brand. It was at zero. It got to $1 million in 2 years. Having some concrete things of because I did the marketing I know how to do, I did this, and then how does it translate to this company I'm going to be becoming a part of? Um, and that was the hardest part for me was finding those things. And you don't want to sound like you're boasting or something like that, but you do have to market yourself. And I think marketing yourself is just as important as anything else you'll do in the marketing career. Is take the lessons you learned from Western and from your early jobs or any of your jobs, but you have to market your own brand. What's Chad's brand? What do I stand for? What do I, you know, what's my brand I'm putting out there into the marketplace and for these companies? And I think that you really have to take time developing your own brand, in order to, continue to move in your career path. So I would definitely say invest in your own marketing, so to speak, and that will help in that negotiation process for
Yeah, I
sure.
love that you touched on that because one of the biggest components of IMC is apart from, producing content for the marketing department, we're also developing our own brand and what we offer to potential companies and stuff. So that's awesome that, that's
It's
making that
awesome.
connection there. Another question
That's
that they
huge.
had was what tools or resources do you use to learn and build your knowledge as a marketer since the industry is constantly changing?
Yeah, there's a lot of great tools out there. A lot of things, come from just different companies have different, marketing tools they use. So you get to learn some actual physical tools that help you do daily marketing just as you go through your career. But in terms of industry knowledge and learning what's going on out there and what's new and what's available, there's great publications like Ad Age, where you can get like literally a daily email of kind of the scoop on what's happening. There's another one like the Marketing Brew. It's just like a daily email. It's kind of like, hey, here's some hot topics in marketing that are going on right now, or some new things, or this new company that's coming out that's saying they can do X, Y, and Z for targeting customers, even though they have, there's so much nowadays, especially with online advertising, with all of the privacy and security settings, and it's getting harder to reach that end consumer. And so, anytime there's new technology out there like that, there are so many resources available. I think the other one that I've used a lot is like the Harvard Business Review. They have a lot of cases around marketing that I have found super helpful when I'm in a situation, like I mentioned earlier, where the CEO is like, we got to solve the problem. You're the marketing guy, like solve the problem. Being able to look at past, case studies or resources that way, that's been a good resource as well to kind of get ideas around strategies and what's worked in the past and what we could, how I could apply that for today. And so I think those are all good tools, but like I mentioned, don't stop learning. You have to keep learning, and I think that's a huge part of being a marketer.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. So although you've already reached so many amazing milestones in your career as a marketer already, where do you hope to see yourself in like the next 10 years?
Yeah, great one. I think for me, I'd love to, having been part of big companies and part of small companies, I'd love to be somewhere where I can have a smaller company where I can have that leadership side of things. I love being able to be a leader inside the company, help decide and push strategy at a bigger level, but also still be involved in the day-to-day that's going on. So for me, I want to find that right spot of having influence to help a company grow or help a company move to that next step or get to that next level that they're trying to get to as a company. There's something magical about being in that kind of a mix that is really, it's really rewarding. And so I'd love to find that place where I can be, make a difference, truly make a difference. And I think any role, even if you're a specific role inside of a massive company, being part of the Amazon Private Brands team inside of Amazon, huge Amazon, you can kind of treat your team or your group as that company, and you can think about how is my role going to influence or impact, the team or the group that I'm on. So that, to me, is what I'm ultimately looking for, is being able to have that position that can influence others. I love teaching and training and helping people that are earlier on in their career, get to another level. So I would love to be able to use that as well as I go forward. So
that's great.
For me.
So our next guest is going to be a late career alum. So they would have graduated from Western, like 20 plus years ago. Do you have any questions you would like answered regarding their journey as a marketer?
Yeah, I'd love to know. Yeah, looking back, is there anything that was like anything in their career that was defining or that helped them, get to that next level for the kind of that next stage of the career, right? You've done a lot up to kind of the midpoint where I'm at, but to continue, what was that? I guess I'm trying to say, what was that thing that like the spark that kept them going, or the thing that pivoted them in the direction they're at now? Was there some big moment that led to that for them? I think that would be interesting to hear. I also would love to just have that, the hindsight is 2020 sort of a thing. If they could, with where they're at now, look all the way back of everything, what's the one thing maybe that they could call out as a must do, or a thing that's really imperative or important in this profession to have a fulfilling career? I think I'd love to hear, now they're at that farther end, what's that one thing that they would recommend? So
yeah,
I'd love
those
to hear
are great
that.
questions. Okay, well, that completes pretty much everything. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. It's been really great to hear about your time at Western and how that's really brought you through your career. We are going to plug Chad's LinkedIn in the description of the podcast if you want to reach out and ask him any more questions, or even just make a new, connection with you, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, please
perfect.
do. I would love
Sweet.
that.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and good luck with everything. This is
Perfect.
great.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this week's episode of After Class featuring mid-career alum Chad Lindstrom. You can follow the Marketing by the Minute podcast to keep up with upcoming After Class episodes, as well as to look at the past 2 seasons. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you again next week after class.